The key didn't fit. I stood on my parents' front porch in the November cold, sliding that brass key into the lock like I'd done 1,000 times as a child, and it wouldn't turn. It wouldn't even go in all the way. I looked at it closely for the first time in years, the familiar scratches, the worn edges, and understood something I should have known at 8 years old. They'd changed the locks. Not because of anything I'd done. Not because I'd run away and stayed gone for 4 years and sent only postcards with pie doodles instead of signatures. They'd changed the lock so long ago that the key I'd kept on my keychain, the key I'd carried across 2,000 miles of highway, was nothing but a memory in metal. I heard voices inside. Laughter. My mother's voice rising above the rest, making some announcement I couldn't quite catch through the door. I knocked. The laughter stopped. I stood there in the cold, my breath fogging in front of my face, and I thought about all the postcards I'd saved. The ones with the cheerful line, "Wish you were here," written in my mother's looping cursive. The ones Aunt Claire had kept in a shoebox for 9 summers, like evidence of something no one was willing to name. The door opened. My mother looked older. Not dramatically. She was still the same woman who'd handed me a blue suitcase when I was 8 and told me that strong kids don't make a fuss. But there was something different in her eyes. Something that looked almost like fear. "Sarah," she said. "Just my name. Nothing else." Behind her, I could see my father sitting in his recliner. His hands trembled against the armrests, and his head listed slightly to one side. I'd been told about the Parkinsons, of course. Aunt Claire had mentioned it in one of our phone calls, the ones I'd made from the payphone outside Rosa's bakery so no one could trace the number. But seeing it was different. "Come in," my mother said, and her voice had the same brisk efficiency it always had. "Everyone's waiting." Everyone. I stepped inside, and the smell of the house hit me. Cinnamon candles. Turkey roasting. The same potpourri my mother had kept in a ceramic bowl on the coffee table since I was 5. Everything looked almost exactly the same, the floral sofa, the framed photos on the walls, the grandfather clock that had never kept proper time. The only thing different was the locks. And me. I was 29 years old, and I'd spent 9 summers being sent away so my brother could have family vacations. I'd spent 4 years building a new life in Idaho, washing dishes, and baking pies and saving every dollar I could. I'd driven 2,000 miles to get here, and I'd sacrificed the down payment on the cafe I was supposed to buy so I could hire someone to care for the father who'd never once asked if I wanted to come on vacation. Now, standing in my childhood home, I realized something else. The key didn't fit because I'd never really belonged here at all. My mother led me into the living room, and I saw them all, my brother Evan with his wife and 2 children, my cousins scattered around on the floor, my Aunt Claire in the corner with her hands folded in her lap. 27 people, all looking at me like I was a ghost who'd stumbled into the wrong house. And that's when my mother said it. The words that would change everything. "Sarah's moving back home," she announced to the room. "She'll be taking care of your father now that his condition has progressed. It's only right. Only right." I looked at my father, who couldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Evan, who was staring at his hands. I looked at Aunt Claire, who was watching me with something that looked almost like relief. And I opened my mouth to speak. But before I could, my mother added, "We've already cleared out the guest room. You can stay there until you find an apartment nearby." The guest room. Not my room. The room they'd let strangers sleep in while I was away at Aunt Claire's for the summer. I heard my own voice come out, calm and steady, the way I'd practiced it in my head for years. "I'm not moving home." The room went silent. "What did you say?" My mother's eyes narrowed. I looked around at all those faces, my family, the people who'd watched me be sent away summer after summer and never said a word, and I told them the truth. I said I'm not moving home. I'll visit twice a year. I'll pay for your father's care. But I won't live here. And I won't be the subject of your announcements ever again. My mother's face turned white. And then she said something I'd been waiting to hear since I was 12 years old. The thing she never thought I'd heard. I was 2 years old when Evan got sick. That's what my parents always told me, like it was the answer to some question I'd never asked. Evan was 6, and he had leukemia, and everything changed. I don't remember the hospital visits or the treatments or the nights my parents spent at his bedside. I don't remember being left with neighbors or distant relatives while they focused on keeping my brother alive. I was too young for those memories. But I remember what came after. When Evan went into remission, my parents celebrated. The whole family celebrated. There were parties and church services and a parade of relatives bringing casseroles and flowers. Everyone said the same thing, it's a miracle. God is good. And I remember standing at the edge of those celebrations, not understanding why everyone was crying and laughing at the same time. I remember my mother picking me up and hugging me, and I remember the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're the easy one," she told me once. I was maybe 4 years old, and she'd just finished brushing my hair for picture day. "Evan needs more attention. You understand that, don't you?" I nodded. I was 4 years old, and I already understood that my needs came second. The pattern started when I was 8. I don't remember who suggested it, maybe my mother, maybe my father, maybe some well-meaning relative who thought Evan needed a break from his little sister. But I remember the blue suitcase. It was small and hard-sided, with a plastic handle that dug into my palm when I carried it. "My mother bought it special," she said. "So I'd have my own luggage." "Strong kids don't make a fuss," she told me, kneeling down to my level. Her eyes were bright with something I couldn't read at 8. "You're going to Aunt Claire's for a few weeks. It'll be fun." A few weeks turned into the whole summer. And the whole summer turned into every summer for 9 years. I spent my summers in Vermont, in a small house on the shore of Lake Champlain, while my parents took Evan on vacations to Disneyland and Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon. They sent me postcards from every stop, cartoon characters waving from ticket booths, waterfalls crashing over cliffs, mountains rising against blue skies. "Wish you were here," they wrote. Every single time. I kept the postcards in the shoebox Aunt Claire gave me. She never said anything about them, but I'd catch her looking at the box sometimes with this strange expression on her face, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't have an answer. That's what she became, over those 9 summers. The solution. The one who kept me when no one else wanted to. Aunt Claire was my mother's sister, but they couldn't have been more different. Where my mother was brisk and efficient, Aunt Claire was warm and unhurried. Where my mother believed in appearances and what people would think, Aunt Claire believed in doing what was right. She taught me how to bake pies. How to pick wild blueberries without ruining the bushes. How to row a boat across the lake without splashing. And she never, ever asked me why I was there. That's what I loved about her, even then. She understood that some things didn't need to be said out loud. She understood that what was happening wasn't fair, and that it didn't help to pretend otherwise. She just let me be. And I let her be the one who listened. When I was 12, I heard the conversation that would change everything. I'd gotten up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, some kind of stomach bug, I think, and I heard Aunt Claire's voice coming from the kitchen. She was on the phone with my mother. "Let her stay for the school year," Aunt Claire was saying. "She can enroll here. It's a good school district. She'll be fine." Silence. My mother's voice, too low to make out the words. "She's happy here," Aunt Claire said. "She's thriving. I don't understand why." Another pause. Longer this time. "I know it's not the plan," Aunt Claire said, and her voice had gotten tight. "But the plan isn't working. She needs More silence. I crept closer, my bare feet cold against the linoleum floor. That's not how it would look. Aunt Claire repeated. You're talking about your daughter. Your child. And you're worried about how it would look? I couldn't hear my mother's response. But I could hear the change in Aunt Claire's breathing, the way it went sharp and ragged. Fine, Aunt Claire said finally. Fine. She'll come home in August, same as always. She hung up the phone. I heard her crying in the kitchen, soft and muffled, like she was trying to keep it from carrying through the walls. I heard her whispering to herself. She's just a kid. She's just a kid. I crept back to bed, my heart pounding. I didn't say anything the next morning. I didn't tell Aunt Claire I'd heard. I didn't ask my mother about it when she came to pick me up at the end of August. But I filed it away. The same way I filed away every summer, every postcard, every time my parents left without me. I filed it all away, and I waited. The waiting lasted years. I stopped asking to be included when I was 14. I'd asked every summer before that, can I come? Please? I'll be good. I won't complain. And the answer was always the same. Not this time, Sarah. Maybe next year. Eventually, I figured out that next year never came. So I stopped asking. I started working instead. I got a job at the diner in town, washing dishes and bussing tables. I saved my tips in an envelope I hid under my mattress. I marked it with one word in pencil, out. I didn't know exactly where out was. I just knew I'd find it. I graduated from high school with honors. My parents came to the ceremony, both of them, for once, and I watched them clap for me with the same polite enthusiasm they'd show for a stranger's child. Evan was there too, his arm around some girlfriend I'd never met. Proud of you, my father said, shaking my hand like I was a business associate. Good job, honey, my mother said, kissing my cheek with lips that barely touched my skin. And that was it. No celebration. No dinner. No congratulations. Evan had a work event that night, my mother told me. It was important. They had to leave early. Of course, I said. I understand. I'd always understood. That night, I packed my car. The blue suitcase was still in my closet. I'd never thrown it away, never given it to Goodwill like I'd meant to. It sat there like a monument to everything I'd been through, and I almost didn't bring it with me. But I did. I brought it because I needed to remember. I needed to remember that I was the one who'd been sent away, the one who'd been told I didn't need anything, the one who'd been called the easy one, while my brother got everything. I left a note on my bed, I'm safe. I'm an adult. Please don't look for me. And I drove. 2,000 miles to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 2,000 miles of desert and mountains and open road. 2,000 miles away from the family who'd never once asked if I wanted to come along. Coeur d'Alene was a mistake. That's what I told myself when I ran out of money in the first week and had to sleep in my car. That's what I told myself when I couldn't find a job and the blue suitcase sat in my trunk like a reminder of everything I'd left behind. But it was also exactly where I needed to be. I found Rosa Delgado on my third day in town. She owned a small cafe on the main street, nothing fancy, just a few tables and a counter and a display case full of pastries. I walked in with my resume and my best smile, and I asked if she needed help. Not really, she said, looking me up and down. But you look like you need something. She gave me the dishwashing job. It paid minimum wage, and the hours were long, and my hands were red and raw by the end of every shift. But I didn't complain. I showed up early and stayed late and worked harder than anyone else in the kitchen. And eventually, Rosa noticed. You have good hands, she told me one day. Fast. Precise. Thank you, I said. Can you bake? I thought about all those summers at Aunt Claire's. All those pies we'd made together, all those hours of learning how to roll out dough and crimp crusts. Yes, I said. I can bake. She started teaching me. Her grandmother's recipes, huckleberry pies, cinnamon rolls, sourdough bread. She'd grown up in a kitchen just like this one, she told me. She'd come to Idaho from Mexico when she was 18, with nothing but her grandmother's recipes and a dream. People think being a baker is simple, she said. Mix, roll, bake. But it's not. It's about understanding. Understanding the dough, understanding the heat, understanding the people who will eat what you make. She paused. It's like family, she said. You have to nurture it. You have to pay attention. You have to let it grow. I thought about my own family. The postcards. The summers. The key that wouldn't fit. I don't know much about that, I said. Rosa smiled. Then I'll teach you. 4 years passed. I moved out of my car and into a small apartment. I bought furniture from thrift stores and learned how to fix my own plumbing. I adopted a cat from the shelter and named her Biscuit. And I saved. Every dollar I could spare went into the envelope marked out. Except now it wasn't about escape. It was about something else. Rosa was getting older. She'd mentioned retirement a few times, always with a wistful look around the cafe. I don't know who'll take over, she'd say. My children don't want it. They have their own lives. I never said anything. But I started saving even harder. I wanted to buy the cafe. I wanted to keep Rosa's dream alive, the same way she'd kept me alive in those first desperate weeks. I wanted to become the kind of person who nurtured something, who understood that family wasn't just blood. And I wanted to send Aunt Claire something. Just a line. Just a sign. I picked postcards. It felt right somehow, a way to reclaim the ones I'd received as a child. Every June, I'd find a postcard with some ridiculous Idaho image, a potato, a forest, a lake, and I'd draw a small pie on the back instead of signing my name. I never wrote anything else. But I knew she'd understand. Then the article happened. A local journalist wrote a piece about Rosa's cafe, focusing on my huckleberry pie. The best pie in Idaho, she called it. Made by a baker who learned her craft from a master. The article ran online. I didn't think anything of it. I'd been featured in local papers before, small town news, nothing major. But this time was different. This time, someone recognized me. It was a distant cousin, my mother's cousin's daughter, I think. She'd moved to Idaho years ago and never mentioned it to anyone. She saw the article, saw my face, saw the name. And she called my mother. I found out 2 weeks later. I was pulling a tray of cinnamon rolls out of the oven when I saw her. A woman in a dark coat, standing by the counter. A woman with familiar eyes and an unfamiliar expression. My mother. I almost dropped the tray. I set it down carefully, wiping my hands on my apron, and walked out to the front of the cafe. What are you doing here? I asked. Your father has Parkinson's, she said. No hello. No explanation. Just that. I know, I said. Aunt Claire told me. Evan has children now. He can't take care of him. I waited. And I have a life here, I said. My mother's eyes hardened. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded paper, pressing it into my hands. You're coming home, she said. That's what's happening. I looked at the paper. It was a job assignment. She'd actually written out a job assignment, listing my duties as if I were an employee she was transferring. Care for father, it read. Handle medical appointments. Manage household. No exceptions. I looked up at her. No, I said. Sarah. I said no. The customers at the nearby tables were staring. I didn't care. I'd spent 9 summers being sent away without a word of protest. I'd spent 4 years building a life from nothing. I wasn't going to let her take it away. Your father needs you, my mother said. Then you should have thought of that before you sent me to Vermont every summer. She flinched. And in that moment, I saw something in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Guilt. The fight went on for days. My mother called. She texted. She emailed. She left voicemails so long that my phone ran out of storage. I didn't answer any of them. But I kept thinking about my father. I kept seeing his hands trembling, his head listing to one side. I kept hearing my mother's voice, "Your father needs you." It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. He'd never asked if I wanted to come on vacation. He'd never once stood up for me when my mother sent me away. He'd been silent, complicit, a ghost in my childhood. But he was still my father. And I couldn't let him suffer. I called Aunt Claire. I told her what had happened. I asked her if she thought I was making a mistake. Sarah, she said, and her voice was thick with emotion. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. What does that mean? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, when you were 12, I offered to let you stay for the school year. I told your mother you were thriving here. I told her you needed stability. I know, I said. I heard you on the phone. You heard that? Yes. I was 12. I heard everything. Aunt Claire started crying. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I should have fought harder. I should have. You did what you could, I told her. You gave me a home every summer. You kept me sane. But I couldn't keep you safe. Nobody could, I said. Except me. I hung up the phone and stared at the ceiling of my apartment. Biscuit curled up beside me, purring. I made the decision that night. I'd visit. I'd set up in-home care for my father. I'd make sure he was taken care of. But I wouldn't move home. I wouldn't give my mother the satisfaction of seeing me give up everything again. The drive back to my parents' house was 2,000 miles in reverse. I drove the same roads I'd driven 4 years ago, but this time I was different. I'd been through too much to be the same person. I'd baked pies and saved money and built a life. I'd learned that family isn't who shares your blood. It's who never lets you be the one who's missing. When I walked into my childhood home, I saw my father first. He was sitting in the same recliner, and his hands were trembling the same way they'd trembled before. But his eyes were clearer. He looked at me, and he tried to smile. Sarah, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm glad you came. I sat down beside him. I took his hand, the trembling one, and held it gently. I'm going to take care of you, I said. I hired someone. A nurse. She'll be here starting next week. Your mother said. I know what my mother said. We didn't talk after that. We didn't need to. But later that night, when I went to bed in the guest room, the room that had been mine and then wasn't, I found something on the nightstand. A folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a private investigator's invoice. Dated 14 months after I'd left. With my father's signature at the bottom. He'd hired someone to find me. He'd tried. And then, according to a note scrawled in the margin, my mother had told him to stop. She said it wasn't worth it, my father had written. I'm sorry I gave up. I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I put it in my pocket and went to sleep. The next morning was Thanksgiving. 27 people crammed into my parents' living room. The same family I'd grown up with. The same cousins who'd watched me be sent away. The same aunts who'd murmured, "Poor Sarah," and then done nothing. And my mother. She announced it to the whole room, the same way she'd announced everything in my life. "Sarah's moving home to take care of your father. It's only right." I watched her face as she spoke. The smug satisfaction. The certainty that she'd won. And then I stood up. "I'm not moving home," I said. The room went silent. "I'll visit twice a year," I continued. "I'll pay for his care. But I won't live here. And I won't be the subject of your announcements ever again." My mother's face turned white. "If you walk out of this house," she said, "don't bother coming back." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw something I'd never noticed before. Fear. She was afraid of losing me. Afraid of being seen as the one who'd sent her daughter away. Afraid of the truth that had been hiding in that shoebox for years. "The key doesn't fit," I said. "What?" "The house key. The one you gave me when I was 8. It doesn't fit the lock." My mother blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You changed the locks," I said. "You changed them so long ago that I don't even know when. And I carried that key for years. Through high school. Through Idaho. Through everything. And it never fit. It didn't. Because I never belonged here," I said. I started walking toward the door. "Sarah." I stopped. Turned back. "I know," I said. "I know about Aunt Claire's offer. I know she wanted me to stay in Vermont when I was 12. I know you said no." My mother's face crumpled. "She said no because of how it would look," I continued. "Because having your daughter live with your sister wasn't the right image. Because you'd rather send me away for 9 summers than admit that something was wrong. You don't understand." "I understand that I was the girl at the sink," I said. "The one who did everything and asked for nothing. The one who was told she didn't need anything." My mother started crying. "Sarah. Did you ever ask me what I needed?" She didn't answer. "Because no one ever did," I said. "No one ever asked. And I spent 29 years believing that I didn't matter. I spent 29 years being the easy one, the healthy one, the one who doesn't need anything." I opened the front door. "But I do matter," I said. "And I'm done." My mother broke down in the doorway. I almost didn't see it. I was halfway to the car when I heard her voice behind me. "Sarah, please. Please don't go." I turned around. She was leaning against the doorframe, her face streaked with tears. For the first time in my life, she looked old. She looked tired. She looked like someone who'd been carrying a weight she didn't know how to put down. "I was 12, she said. "When my mother got sick. I was 12 years old, and I took care of her. I never asked for anything. I never complained. I stopped walking." "That's what I meant," she said, her voice cracking. "When I said you were the easy one. You were like me. You didn't need anything. You were strong. Being strong doesn't mean not needing things," I said. "It means asking for them." She stared at me. "I know you were the girl at the sink," I said. "I know you were the one who was never asked. But that doesn't give you the right to make me the same person." I didn't. "You sent me away every summer," I said. "You gave me a blue suitcase and a postcard and told me strong kids don't make a fuss. You taught me that I didn't matter." She was sobbing now. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" "From being seen. From having needs. From being anything other than the easy one." She didn't answer. "I love you," I said. You're my mother. But I can't be the girl at the sink anymore. I won't be. I got in the car. My mother watched me drive away. She never said the key would fit. But I knew, for the first time in my life, that I didn't need it to. I came back. Not to stay, I'd meant what I said about visiting twice a year. But I came back for Christmas. And for Easter. And for the following Thanksgiving. I came back with my father's nurse, and I came back with Aunt Claire, and I came back with Rosa, who decided to close the cafe for a few days so she could see where I'd grown up. I came back with the blue suitcase. It was different now. I'd filled it with holiday tablecloths, the ones Aunt Claire had saved from my summers in Vermont. The ones she'd been planning to give me for years. You always loved these, she said when I opened the suitcase. I thought you should have them. I wrapped my arms around her. Thank you, I said. For everything. She hugged me back. You were never the one who was missing, she said. You were the one who was waiting to be found. The Thanksgiving dinner wasn't perfect. My mother was still awkward around me, still unsure how to act without controlling everything. My father's Parkinson's had progressed, and he needed help eating his turkey. Evan's children were loud and messy and spilled cranberry sauce on the tablecloth. But it was different. Because this time, I was the one hosting. I'd convinced Rosa to let me use the cafe for Thanksgiving. I'd opened the doors to anyone who needed a place to go, the regulars who'd become my friends, the strangers who'd wandered in off the street, the lonely people who had nowhere else to be. And I'd hung the blue suitcase in the corner like an altar. Not to my childhood. Not to my pain. But to the woman I'd become. The woman who'd learned to bake pie and save money and stand up for herself. The woman who'd driven 2,000 miles and back. To Sarah, Rosa said, raising her glass. The hardest working baker I've ever known. To Sarah, everyone echoed. I looked around the room at all those faces. My family. My friends. My chosen family. Evan came up to me near the end of the night. He had a shoebox in his hands, the same shoebox Aunt Claire had kept all those years. I found these, he said. Aunt Claire gave them to me. He opened the box. The postcards. All of them. Every single one my parents had sent me over 9 summers. Wish you were here. Wish you were here. Wish you were here. I'd never shown them to anyone. Not even Aunt Claire. But I'd kept them. I'd kept them because I needed to remember. I read them, Evan said. All of them. I never knew. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry, he said. For never turning the cards over. For never asking. I took the box from him. It's okay, I said. You were a kid too. Doesn't make it right. No, I agreed. But it makes it human. He smiled. Can I call you Aunt Pie? His daughter asked, tugging on my sleeve. I looked down at her. She couldn't have been more than 5, the same age I'd been when my mother first told me I was the easy one. Of course, I said. I'd like that. And then I turned back to the room. To all the people who'd never let me be the one who was missing. 1 year later, I signed the papers. Rosa and I bought the cafe together. She decided not to retire after all. She said she couldn't stand the thought of leaving her recipes in someone else's hands. We're partners now, she said. Partners and family. I hugged her. Thank you, I said. For everything. You earned it, she said. You earned every bit of it. The blue suitcase sits in the corner of the cafe now. It's filled with tablecloths and memories and the remnants of who I used to be. But it's different. Because I'm different. I'm Sarah Mitchell, age 31. I'm a baker and a business owner. I'm a woman who drove 2,000 miles to find herself and 2,000 miles back to prove she'd found her. And I'll never be the easy one again. The last postcard is still in the shoebox. It's from my parents' vacation to the Grand Canyon. My mother wrote, "Wish you were here," in her looping cursive. My father added a smiley face. I look at it sometimes, when I need to remember where I came from. I think about that 8-year-old girl with the blue suitcase, standing on Aunt Claire's porch while her parents drove away. I think about all those summers, all those postcards, all those years of being told I didn't need anything. And I think about the woman I became. The woman who finally asked for something. The woman who finally belonged. Because family isn't who shares your blood. It's who never lets you be the one who's missing.